I was watching a video by fellow artist Kelsey Rodriguez about her art goals for 2023. I thought this was a cool idea for a video, so I'm just kind of stealing that. Shout out to Kelsey for that. It's just New Year's resolutions, really. It's not like anything new, but I'm shouting her out anyway. So just a few housekeeping and more shout outs at the beginning of this video here before I jump into it. I put up chapters in case you want to skip. I'll do that in the description as well, learning the YouTube things. I'm going to start with a shout out to the Lights Camera Render community from School of Motion for the amazing support last week. I really appreciate it. It made my first YouTube video way less scary and less awkward. It's still awkward, but it's not as scary anymore. It's just annoying trying to record audio. It's like one of the most impossible things ever. I don't expect that response every time I post, obviously, but it's amazing how just a little bit of feedback can really encourage you to keep going. So I thank you guys again so much for that. I'm also going to shout out Kelsey Rodriguez again here, and also Louise Stegel. I'm not sure how she pronounces it. They're two fellow artists who have moved over to YouTube, I think, in the past couple years. They both made really convincing cases for artists who are looking to turn their art into a business and branch out from just posting on Instagram and hoping for the best. And getting sad when it doesn't work because it expects like an unreasonable amount of work and effort on top of you honing your craft. So they've both been really like influential on me on like starting this thing finally. They gave me the kick in the butt that I needed to finally get started. Like I said, I started this channel in 2016, so it's like ridiculous it's taking me this long. But thanks to Kelsey and Louise for their awesome content and communities, and I hope to join in a little more in the next year. Moving on to my Procreate footage, I just want to kind of preface this. I should have said this in the last video, but there's a couple things I want to point out. The main thing is that most of this content is stuff that I was posting for Instagram, so it is in portrait format, not 1080 HD. So unfortunately, we just have this skinny strip in the middle. That's kind of why I added the channel art of the character props on either side of the footage, because it's just like this narrow strip in the center with like space on the side, and it just looks a bit dumb. So I was like, let's put something in there for now. And a lot of my footage right now is in this format, so it's usually gonna, come with character props on the side because I didn't know what else to do with that empty space. The other thing is that I didn't understand that there was a reference tool inside Procreate. It's like a little window pop-up where you can throw your reference images in there and not have it show up on the screen. So I didn't know that. And so you'll see constantly me throwing pictures of models in and like past illustrations so that I can steal the palette from my older drawings, that kind of thing. So it looks a little funny with these crazy images flashing on the screen. So I apologize for that. Also, I'm always changing the background from white to gray and like flashing my gradient map explorations in there. So it's just a bit wacky looking. I don't plan on like saying sorry for every little thing, but I just wanted to kind of explain why the footage looks the way it does, because it's a bit weird probably. Growing pains, it will get better. Moving on to the goals. So the first one for me is environments. This is a big one. It's an issue that a lot of artists struggle with, and then we're always talking about how we plan to do better and like to tackle it and do it later, etc. I'm putting my foot down and I'm tackling it. To me, there's no point in having all these characters if they have nowhere to hang, so that's got to happen. The issue I always have is finding a workflow that actually works and flows so I can get shit done. I've tried perspective tools. I believe the one for Photoshop is actually called perspective tools, and if you are working from a reference image, it's still tricky. I mean, I don't know, if you're not using a reference image, you're just dragging lines all over the place, and it's just ridiculous. So usually you should be working with a reference image. It works a little bit easier in Photoshop. I find in Procreate, the perspective tools, even with a reference image, are very cumbersome, and I don't understand. I will continue exploring that, but the other way that I plan to try is just using 3D. You can use kit bash sets, which is what I've tried in the past. The only issue with kit bash sets is that they're already heavily designed. They're conceptually finished and they're very detailed. And so if you're trying to create a sci-fi universe from scratch, it doesn't really make sense to use things that are already, designed and themed and have their own look, because you're trying to create your own. So the other way to do it is to just start with primitive shapes and kind of build your composition and then render out an image of this and use that as a reference. And I think this is the best way to do it as opposed to photographs, because you get to have more control over the design. And I think this is the best way to go. So when you're trying to design from scratch, I think this is the best way to go. So that's what I'm going to start with, I think. And I bought a little ArtStation course. It's called Blender for Illustration, I believe. And I'm going to dig into that and see what I find in terms of tips I can pick up. I think that it uses the same method that I mentioned earlier, like just using primitives and kind of creating your shots with basic blocking and then rendering it out and using as a reference. So I'm excited about that, but using 3D as a starting point. I do use DAZ for poses for characters, and I do find that it's a little easier because you can just do whatever you want. You move the character however you want. It's the same with using Blender and primitive shapes. You can just kind of create whatever you want and then render it out and then use it as a reference. I know there's a lot of really great stock image artists out there. I used to use Senshi Stock. I think she goes by another name now. I don't remember what it's called, but great pose reference. It's just a lot of these artists have so much content that it's really hard to find exactly what you're looking for in the just mountains of packs. And it's like I usually will just start by Googling actually a pose reference and then going from there. If I can't find anything, then I'll usually go the DAZ route. And so I plan to do the same with environments. I've spent years and years learning how to draw characters, and for backgrounds, I'm just not as worried about it. So I don't really have a problem with using it as using 3D as a bit of a stepping stone. I know people like to argue about how people use reference on Twitter or everywhere, and it's just a bit silly, in my opinion. As long as you're using a reference in an ethical way and learning from it, I don't see the problem. And I think people need to worry more about their own work instead of telling other people how to make theirs. So let's move on to the next one. Dynamicism. This is another me putting my foot down moment. I tend to draw a lot of static portraits with no expression and a little bit of just the head and shoulder, and that's it. So I'm putting a stop to my static, expressionless portraits here and now. I can't do another year of boring portraits if I want to like stand out and have my work tell a story and be interesting. So starting this off with a set of digital sketchbook pages. This just randomly happened as I was creating the channel art for these videos with the little props on the side. I started drawing little portraits beside these props. They are like dynamic head angles and sort of more movement in the poses. So they're just little sketchbook pages and explorations of the characters. And I think all in all, even though they are portraits, they're a little more fun. It's a little more interesting, and it's just easing me into this. And the dynamic head angles are going really well, and I'm having fun with it. It's great. I'm having a blast. That feeling of leveling up is there's nothing like it. I've also been working on full body character drawings with more interesting poses. So I'm going to continue with those. I just finished one of Jeddah on Monday. I posted on Instagram, I think, and I was so happy with that one. I incorporated some graphic design elements into that, which I really like doing. I have a lot of fun making graphic posters in various styles. So more of that on the way. This goal is not as hard as environments for me. I've already been working on it with pretty good results for the past month or so. So I'm excited to take that further. Environments is still kind of this hill that I'm looking at that I need to kind of climb over. So, onwards and upwards. The last art goal is building the Stellar Elite universe. I started mapping it out with just a basic list. It is going to start with developing each character's appearance through character sheets. It's a pretty standard practice for character design. I did start with Vair at the end of December 2021. I am going to refine hers. I think I want to push the designs a little more and make them a bit wilder. She is from Sada. I think I mentioned Sada in the last video, but it's the main environment that I'm actually going to start with. And it's kind of a Wild West desert canyon kind of sci-fi world. And it's, kind of wild and dangerous and crazy. And I want to push the kind of crazy plastic jackets and metallic everything and just almost kind of a Y2K style. I want to explore, at least with the younger crowds, There's going to be a mishmash of everything. It's going to be a fun world to develop. But yeah, so character sheets first. And then speaking of worlds, I want to develop the characteristics of the 4 main planets I want to draw like a scene from each one of them, and I've got some fun ideas too for motion graphics and 3D integration as well. If anybody knows the game Mass Effect and is a massive fucking fan of it, like I am, it's kind of the idea of like, you know, looking at the spinning planet and seeing the little write up, and it's kind of, you know, sci-fi UI vibes of the planet exploration in that game. Very heavily inspired by that game, by the way, as well as a lot of other things. We'll talk about inspiration in other videos. I think that's a fun topic. The other thing I want to develop is things like sports teams and corporations and media, unions, gangs, all that kind of stuff, which is the fun stuff. So much fun to make up that kind of stuff for sci-fi world building and any world building, obviously. I do have one sports team called the Sada City Pikas, which is Vair's favorite team. She's usually wearing a blue t-shirt with yellow stripes, which is Sada City's team colors. I do need to make up a little animal mascot, which I'm kind of thinking of crossing like a fox and a hyena and maybe like a prairie dog. I don't know. There's some crazy ideas that will come in the that will come up later. I also want to look into like the main theme and purpose behind the story. I originally started Stellar Elite as just a fun way to learn art. And I was like, it's not that deep. It's just secret agents in space and who cares? But if I'm going to do little stories and comics, then I think that we need to kind of narrow down what we're exploring here. I don't think it's going to be anything new or groundbreaking. Like I said in the last video, it's just going to be me exploring things that I love and am obsessed with. Fashion, science fiction, cyberpunk, military industrial complex, paranoia, espionage, all this kind of shit. I love it. So we're going to explore it in that kind of way. We'll see where we get with it. I don't know. I'm not a writer or storyteller, but I'm going to try. The last thing in this world building topic is actually writing stellar shorts, which is going to be little comics. I'm not sure how this is going to go. I do have an idea to start and ease myself in, which is kind of an introduction to each character. And it's going to be like a page with like words and like little scenes that kind of describe them. And I'm kind of excited. It's going to be very basic. It sounds like it's almost more complicated than it actually is, but I'm pretty like stoked to get this started. I am going to try my hardest to start with Jaro because he has been woefully neglected this year. I've done mostly Jeddah and Vair art. I also have two other characters named Mr. Redacted and Jaro, and we are going to be introducing another member of the crew because they do live on a ship. I'm really getting into the nitty gritty here. We will have to do a video of everything that I've mapped out so far in terms of the Stellarverse. Ugh, such a fucking nerd. Anyway, that's basically what I want to do for building the Stellar Elite universe. So that will be a lot of fun. On to the next one. So that's basically it for art goals. It's funny, I've forgotten in my obsession with getting somewhere on Instagram, I kind of forgot how much fun it is just to challenge yourself and get over a hurdle. It's like an addiction. Once you figure something out and you like what you see on the page or on your screen, you just want to do more and more and more and push yourself further and further. And it, like, literally, I'm addicted now. It's really satisfying when you get over that hurdle that you've been ignoring because you're just trying to keep up with posting every 5 fucking minutes and appease algorithms and have an aesthetic and all these other things that just plague artists. That's not to say I don't desperately want a style and an aesthetic of my own. I do. I just don't want to focus too hard on that. I just want to learn and get better, get good, scrub, and move on. And I think it'll come. That's what everybody says anyway. I really have no idea. Here's hoping. There's other goals as well for me that are non-art related. The main one is to move more, get outside and move. I think a lot of us, probably artists who are digital, have this problem where we don't go outside and we spend all our time stationary in front of a screen, which is awful. So I'd like to find a routine that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Something that I can do easily, realistic. That's the one. I want something realistic that I can keep up and not get tired of, because I get really bored just doing sit-ups in the apartment. It's got to be something better than that. I was watching a video the other day and somebody mentioned something called Copilot, and I'm intrigued just because it gives you somebody to help you, and I think that's better, but it is obviously going to be a paid thing, so we'll see. The other thing is just to go outside more, go for walks and bike rides. I've recently moved back to the neighborhood I grew up in. I'm in Toronto, in case anybody was wondering. You probably weren't. But I'm near the beach, and there's boardwalks and bike trails and all sorts of paths and ravines. It's a really beautiful city, and there's just no excuse for me not to take advantage of that. So that's another thing. I did get a bike last summer and I didn't use it very much. So I got to get on that. My last goal is to put up one video per week for the year of 2023. So that should result in 52 videos, but we'll see. In lieu of a full video, I might, do a YouTube short in case I just can't come up with a video or I don't have time or whatever. I do work in film in the art department, and it is very time-sucking, all-consuming industry. So there's probably going to be times where I just don't have the wherewithal to go through with a full video, but we'll see. I'm not the best at time management. That's also something I'd like to work on. Obviously, I will need to. But yeah, I want to build this channel up. I want to get used to things. Recording my voice is very difficult. I find that I'm doing it 16 times over, trying to tighten it up and get rid of the uhs and whatever, which I am just horrible with. And I want to get better at that. So that's it. Let me know if you have any art or life goals for next year and how you plan on tackling those. Let me know in the comments. I'm trying not to call them resolutions and fall into that trap that we all do, or like sad that we didn't finish them or we fell off the wagon, whatever. But really, goals is just another name for the same shit. So thanks for watching and listening. And if you like sci-fi world building and art related nerdery, make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.